Hello, everyone. My name is Mike, and welcome to my project about the housing market. And yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing my project on is the housing market from the year 2000 to now, I guess, 2023. I decided to choose that because that's what my group originally was gonna do, and I thought, hey, that's a great idea. So I'm gonna do the yeah, the housing market from Y2K to 2023. And yeah, over the past 2 decades, the housing market is it's been experienced a lot of shifts, a lot of policy changes, uh, social trends. It's been just constantly shifting and changing up and down, left and right. And so, yeah, I guess this video is to help uh, concise those events down, like do a overview of everything that's happened. And yeah, I guess let's start it with uh, our first chapter 2000 to 2010, the boom and bust. The first decade of the 21st century was probably one of the best we had in a long time. It was just a great time to buy a house. The housing boom of the first half was followed by an unfortunate bust in 2008. That's why I call this chapter the boom and the bust, the boom and bust. And yeah, we had low interest rates, chilled lending standards, and the start of insanely low mortgages, which fueled a surge in housing demand. Homeownership rates reached historic highs and property values soared. Everyone wanted to buy a house, and everyone did. In 2004, the homeownership rates reached 69.2%, which is the highest this country has ever seen. That's the highest it's ever been at any time in the country. This was most likely due to housing being so cheap and affordable. In January of 2004, an average house cost $262,100. Now, all throughout the year, that trend stays the same. In March, it was 261. In May, 260, 400. July, 279.2. Uh, September, 269.2. It was all just really, really low housing rates. The highest being in October at 289.6, but compared to the housing rates and how much a house costs nowadays, that's still nothing. That's a lot cheaper than houses cost nowadays in 2023. However, though, not everything stays the same, and the bubble burst in 2008, triggering the global financial crisis. There were widespread foreclosures, plummeting values, and a ton of unsold properties marked this horrendous period of economic, I guess, unsureness. No one knew what was going to happen. The average price for a house in 2008 was around the same as in 2004, if not it was a little bit more expensive, but near the end of 2008, uh, prices dropped down to 245.2K, which is the lowest it had been since the early 2000s, with I think the lowest in the early 2000s being 199.2. If my data is correct, that should be the lowest, at least this country scene. And yeah, but housing was so cheap because no one had the money to be able to afford it. And that leads us into chapter two, 2010 to 2020, recovery and transformation. The aftermath of the financial crisis led to a prolonged period of recovery and transformation. Governments implemented stimulus measures, central banks slashed interest rates, and foreclosure prevention programs were initiated. Uh, During this early state, we got home prices rising back up a little bit. They were still pretty cheap in the 250s ish range. 250s, 280s. Some were at the end of 2010, it was 291.7K to buy a house. And, it was pretty cheap still, but it was slowly rising. And as the economy regained its footing, housing markets gradually stabilized. However, the recovery was uneven, with some regions experiencing rapid rebound while others lagged. If we look at the home ownership rates in the 2010s, they at the beginning of 2010, home ownership rate was at 67.1, marking a nearly historic high. Uh, but that was slowly, I mean, not slowly, it was rapidly going down. By the beginning of 2011, it was down to 66.4. At the beginning of 2012, it was 65.4. And this was most likely due to people wanting to rent out apartments instead and get rentals instead of actually owning a house because it was cheaper. You could just rent out a property, and people didn't want to have to deal with the foreclosure crisis, which could have robbed them of a house, robbed them of everything they worked for. And in 2016, we had reached the absolute lowest homeownership rate the country had ever seen, with that being 62.9%. The only other time it ever got near that low was back in 1965, which, you know, is kind of insane. The average price for a house in 2016 was around 350K. Some of the highest being for 382.50, and some of the lowest being for 341.7. And that trend just keeps going up and uphill in 2017, 18, 19, and 2020 is its own thing. And these prices were around 100K more than they were back in 2004. Back in the 2000s, actually, just any of it. The absolute highest we ever had in the early 2000s was March 2007, which was 329.4K. And yeah, that's the highest we had ever seen that go. Anyway, next chapter, we have 2020 to 2023 pandemic impacts and supply constraints. Obviously, we had the pandemic, COVID, which introduced an unprecedented challenge to the housing market. Initially, the market experienced a temporary shutdown due to economic uncertainties and lockdown measures. However, record low mortgage rates sparked a surge in home buyer demand, demolishing existing supply chains. Uh, The average price to buy a house in 2020, uh, before the pandemic, was around 384,000, and then once the pandemic hit, that went down to 360. So it was about $24,000 cheaper to buy a house after the pandemic hit, which is pretty insane. But then after that, uh, the home prices began to skyrocket again in 2021. Uh, Yeah, home prices in 2021 have increased at unprecedented rates as the economy has reemerged from the downturn of 2020. The average price to buy a house in January of 2021 was 418,000, and by the end of 2021, it was 491. And it raised almost 100K in 1 year, which is crazy. And as we look ahead to the remainder of 2023, the housing market remains influenced by a complex web of factors: supply chain disruptions, rising construction costs, and evolving demographic trends will continue to shape the landscape. Policymakers face the ongoing challenge of balancing market dynamics with the need for affordable housing solutions. In conclusion, the housing market's journey from 2000 to 2023 has been characterized by highs and lows, recovery and transformation, and adaptation to unforeseen challenges. The resilience of the housing market underscores its central role in economic stability and the ongoing pursuit of sustainable, inclusive housing solutions. So, yeah, that's my project. I hope you enjoyed. I would have put graphs over on this side probably because that's where I have the most space. And yeah, let's hope I get a good grade. I did this by myself. So,